The State of Crypto is presented by Tron, connecting the world to the power of cryptocurrency.
Good morning and welcome back to First Mover. New York's financial regulator wants tougher restrictions on crypto coin listings for companies regulated in the state, especially if they target retail clients. Joining us now to discuss is counsel for international law firm Reed Smith, Hadas Jacobi. Welcome to the show, Hadas.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. You previously worked for the New York State Department of Financial Services Office of the General Counsel and Enforcement. What parts of this proposed guidance do you think are good for the industry, and what parts do you think maybe not so much?
So I think most importantly, the department first passed guidance in this area in 2020. So right now, there is a proposal which is up for public comment to revise the 2020 guidance. There are a couple of new things in this proposal, but there are a couple of things that are staying the same. I wouldn't necessarily categorize it as tougher restrictions on coin listing. I think there are two parts of this. First of all, there's the green list modifications that DFS has put in. And then second of all, there is an additional requirement for covered entities or entities that have a BIT license or a limited purpose trust company chartered in New York to have a policy in place for delisting coins. So I'll start with the green list. So the green list was put in place in 2020. The previous iteration of it included about 25 coins. And those were coins that had been adopted by at least 3 entities that were either licensed or chartered with the department and operating in New York. And there were several other criteria of how to get on the list, but it was a much more robust list than this very whittled down version we saw published on Monday, which only left us with 8 coins. So it's, we have our Bitcoin, we have our Ether, we have a couple of stable coins, Paxos coins, which DFS loves because it's a New York State chartered company. But other than that, I think that the industry has taken issue with specifically XRP not being on the list and Dogecoin not being on the list. And I think that XRP not being on the list is being viewed by some in the industry as either a political or a retaliatory move, which I think is wholly untrue. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just got to ask you, given your experience with the NYDFS, what do you think is going on behind the scenes? New York used to be seen as a very crypto-friendly state that has kind of been withered away over the years because of various different regulatory implementations. What do you think is happening here? Is the NYDFS trying to push crypto outside of the state?
Absolutely not. I think the complete opposite is true, actually. So the shift that we've seen with Superintendent Adrian Harris, who started almost exactly 2 years ago at DFS, is a shift away from enforcement and towards expanding the department's crypto group, which is the Research and Innovation Group. Adrian Harris has added approximately 60 staffers to the group, which is a huge deal. I mean, before we were talking about just a handful of folks that were working in this area at DFS, and now there's, a veritable army dedicated to processing licensing applications and really doing a little bit more hand-holding with the industry. I think that the department is very open to partnering with virtual currency entities in New York in order to make sure that they have what they need to proceed in terms of, especially some kind of security, considering the volatile regulatory landscape on the federal front. I think that Adrienne Harris has really been trying to fill that gap. She testified before Congress about the need for more clarity on the regulatory front at the federal level. And she is trying to bring that to New York as well. And one of the ways she's doing that is kind of taking a step back from the enforcement first approach, which was, the NYDFS's bread and butter for a long time. And she's looking to kind of streamline operations, to put in the resources that the department needs in order to be able to handle the massive amounts of, applications and filings that are coming in, so that things get processed in a timely manner and more entities can get a BIT license.
So just to be clear, these token rules, these are for the exchanges that are registered in New York with a BIT license. Is that correct?
Yes, either a BIT license or a New York State chartered limited trust company.
And how many exchanges are we talking about now?
That are that have
New York,
licenses. Yeah. I don't know the exact number, but it is not many, and that is extremely surprising. But obviously, the process for surprising.
How can it be? It's like Fox Butterfield. It's a Fox Butterfield headline because it's basically this whole idea that what's the surprise? It's overregulated or it's regulated, and then now all of a sudden it's like, well, gee, why there's nobody to regulate here?
Yeah, I mean, there's also, nobody else who's regulating. And I think that that's really the problem is that, I represent crypto entities in my current life as a private practitioner. And what I'm hearing over and over again from those in the industry is that they want more regulation. They want more regulatory certainty. And that's something that we're just not getting from the federal level. So, while there is pushback and maybe some resistance to what some in the industry are viewing as New York taking a stronger stance, I think there's also some level of comfort that we can draw from the fact that there is a grown-up in the room who is making some rules that we can actually comply with and know that we are doing the right thing and that, we're not going to get dinged for something else, right?
Is New York taking any inspiration from other jurisdictions? Like, I mean, are you kind of is New York looking around the world, for example? I mean, because you're right. I mean, New York stands out in the context of the United States where, there's a lot of murkiness and confusion. But I'm just curious, like, when do you think that when New York is making some of these new rules, are they looking at Europe or Asia or other places that, actually do have more regulatory clarity when it comes to crypto?
Absolutely. That's another difference, I think, that's been, very visible in this current administration. Adrienne Harris has been having conversations with regulators all over the world. If you look at her feed, there are, photos of her traveling to all kinds of wonderful places. And I think that she really is, having those conversations in order to draw inspiration. But I think that she's also drawing inspiration from trends that she sees here. Like, for example, the way that the new guidance distinguishes between coins that are being offered to consumers, retail operations, and coins that are being offered to industry players. I think that is a distinction that wasn't present in these regulations before. And part of the reason that DFS put that in is not to create a more onerous requirement for listing consumer coins. It's actually just to enable, some kind of distinction where if you are listing a coin and it's being offered to institutional investors, you have a lot more leeway to, have your freedom with that, because those are trusted counterparties and, there are less consumer protection concerns.
What does this all mean for New Yorkers, New York's retail investors, New York institutional investors, people trading on their phones at a cafe in Piermont, for instance? Not that I've done that. Just what does it mean for them? Are they still going to be able to trade a wide array of currencies on exchanges that maybe don't operate in New York? What's the nuts and what's the man on the street effect here?
I'm not sure if there really, is any. I think that a lot of companies have been having a hard time getting their BIT licenses, and they've been afraid to operate in New York because of the risk of enforcement and because of these, the broad way in which the bit reg, as we call it, the bit license regulation is drafted, where it's really kind of all encompassing. I think that the effect, if any, is going to be that the New York regulatory framework is going to be open to more exchanges. It's going to be open to more small players, to more startups that are going to be able to know that it's not, an insurmountable barrier to get your BIT license. This is something that can happen. And, in the meantime, there's now a provisional framework for operating while your application is pending. There are all kinds of resources that DFS has put in place over the past 2 years that just weren't present there historically. So I think that, this view of New York as a place where crypto goes to die is on the outs.
Hadas, thank you so much for joining us this morning and providing some insight into the regulatory realm in New York.
Thank you. Wonderful being here.
That was Reed Smith counsel Hadas Jacobi.